Data aggregation is what turns raw numbers into real insights. And when it comes to summarizing the data and quickly plotting to present the insights, two tools dominate the space: Excel or Google Sheets and the Tableau. Here's the same elementary visualization created from raw data, one in Google Sheets and the other one in Tableau. In this video, we'll explore both approaches, first using the sheets to understand the logic and flow behind data summarization and create this chart, then in Tableau to see how effortlessly we can build the same visualization in just a few seconds. And the moment you create your first visualization, you will be like William Dafoe. Hey there, welcome to the next video in this section. Let's start by discussing the agenda first. We'll begin with a simple business question, that is, how do we calculate total sales per category? To tackle this, we will apply a 5-step framework, figuring out what's the question, basically understanding the problem, why does the business care about it, how do we approach the solution, its technical implementation in Sheets and Tableau, and finally extracting key takeaways. Next, we will start implementing the solution from scratch in Google Sheets first. We will explore multiple ways to achieve the same data summary or aggregation and then build a simple bar chart for this data summary. We'll start with basic formulas to build intuition, then seamlessly transition to pivot tables, showing you how they can simplify the same task with just a few clicks. I'm intentionally introducing the pivot tables early in the course as my goal here is to quickly address the elephant in the room, which is pivot tables, by subtly introducing them while answering the simple business question. Once you're confident in how the calculation logic works, we'll switch to Tableau to create the same data summary and bar chart visualization. Here you will see just how fast and efficient Tableau is, not only in building this visualization but also in adding an extra layer of user-friendly interactivity with just a few clicks. After that, I'll quickly show you how to create calculated fields in Tableau, just like we did in the last video, where we converted sales values from US dollars to Indian rupees and created a new column in the Google Sheet itself. This will help you see how easy it is to customize and transform your data directly within Tableau. Next, we'll tackle another simple yet important business question, figuring out average sales, and apply the same 5-step solution framework to quickly build the visualization. Now, this second question may seem straightforward, but here's where we need to be careful. A simple average gives us average sales per product. But what if the business actually needs average sales per order? These are two very different calculations, and I'll walk you through exactly how to differentiate them so you don't fall into this common trap. Now that we have our agenda set, let's dive right in and start with our first business question, which is calculating total sales per category. Alright, now that we have a solid understanding of our data from the previous video, let's jump into our first question and apply our 5-step approach framework to solve this systematically. First, defining the question. It's a simple and straightforward one. We need to compute the total sales per category, and we already know that categories are office supplies, furniture, and technology. It's important for the business because understanding which categories drive the most revenue directly impacts decision making, especially when it comes to optimizing inventory. By knowing which product sells the most, businesses can allocate resources efficiently and ensure they're always stocked with high demand items. Now let's build a solution approach using a dummy sales data example. Here I have created a small dataset that looks like a subset of the main superstore data, which actually contains 10,000 rows and 20 columns. This will help us break down the logic step by step before applying it to the full dataset. For this demonstration, we'll focus only on the relevant fields, which is order ID, category, product ID, and sales, keeping it simple while still capturing the core logic of our analysis. Now, first step is we need to aggregate the sales by summing up sales values per category. Let me demonstrate this step by step. For example, if we look at categories one by one, starting with office supplies, and sum all the sales value only for the office supplies, we get $120 of total sale for office supplies. Similarly, for furniture, we get a total of $480. And for technology category, we get total value as $800. So holistically, this is what we call aggregating the sales values by some method at category level. Once we have this aggregated table, converting it into the bar chart visualization is pretty straightforward. And that's how we achieve our first visualization. I hope this aggregation logic and solution approach are super clear to you by now. All that left is the technical implementation. First, we will implement this in Google Sheets using different methods. We will start with the basics, then use formulas, and finally my favorite method, which is pivot tables, for a faster and more efficient solution. Next, we will implement the same solution in Tableau, and finally, we'll interpret key insights from the final visualization to understand what the data is telling us. Let's start by implementation of the solution approach in the Google Sheets first. Here we have our Superstore sales data in Google Sheets. If you have been following along, you already know how we imported this data and created the INR calculated field using a basic formula. We have covered that in complete detail in the last video. So now we can jump straight into aggregating the sales by category. First, I'm gonna create a new sheet by clicking on this big plus icon at the bottom. Let's double click on the sheet name and rename it to Simple Sum Calculations. In this sheet, I'll demonstrate all three methods to aggregate the data and build our first plot step by step. First method is basic manual lookup method. We take note of things and type the values in the cells manually. To achieve this insight table manually, let me type category names in the sheet itself. First, type the headers, category and total sales in dollar value. And then type the category names one by one. First one is furniture, second one is office supplies, and third one is technology. Now it's time to figure out total sales value for each of these categories. Let's go to orders table and look up these values. If I select the sales column, it tells me that the total sales of all categories is around $2.23 million, right? To figure out total sales only for furniture category and others one by one, let's click on any cell and from the quick access toolbar, click on this filter button. By clicking on this create a filter button, introduces a filter in the sheet. Notice the small filter icon adjacent to each column name. It shows that we are now ready to use this filter option. Now click on the category field filter and first clear out all the selected categories and select the furniture category only and click OK. Notice the status bar got updated. It shows that out of 9994 rows in the dataset, 2121 rows belongs to furniture category products. This helps us isolate and analyze the sales data for each category separately. Now click on the sales column Q to select all the sales values in this filtered data. Notice the total sale at the status bar, which is $741,999.79. This is the total sale value only for the furniture category. Let's note this value and put it in the sum calculation sheet adjacent to the furniture category. Now it's time to figure out total sales for office supplies. Let's go back to orders table and this time select office supplies from the category filter. First, deselect the furniture and select office supplies and click OK. Again select the sales column by clicking on the Qth column and take a note of the total sale from the status bar. And let's again put this value in the sum calculation sheet adjacent to the office supplies. Repeat the same process one more time for technology category. Go to the orders table from the category filter, deselect the office supplies and select the technology category and click OK. Again select the sales column, take note of total sales from the status bar and finally put this number in the sum calculation sheet adjacent to the technology category. This is the aggregated view we wanted to achieve. But as you can see, it took quite a bit of effort. It's cumbersome and not the most efficient way to do it. However, this exercise is totally worth it because this demonstration breaks down exactly how these values are computed, helping us build a solid foundation for data aggregation. Now let's quickly convert this aggregated table into our first visualization bar chart for reporting purpose. Click on the first cell and select the whole table and go to Insert from the Sheets menu bar and select Chart. As soon as we click on Chart, Sheet automatically inserts a pie chart. You can explore pie chart as well, but let's select the bar chart instead from this chart type drop down at the right hand side. This area is called Chart Editor. From this drop down, choose a bar chart, which is also known as column chart. Looks much better. Let's also display the category wise sales figures on these bars as well. To show labels, go to Customize, select Series and go down and tick OK on the data labels to show the sales value on the bars. There's a lot of customization possible here. I suggest you take a moment and explore all these options and see what changes this makes to your plot. Let's resize the plot a bit and put it under the aggregated table. Since these values are quite large and the decimal places doesn't make that much sense. So we can also round off these values to the nearest integer to make it more pleasing and readable. Select this column C as it contains these values and go to Quick Access toolbar again and click on this decrease decimal places and keep clicking till we have integer values. Adjacent to this one increases the decimal places as you can see on the screen. But let's just stick to the integer values only. Much better, right? This is the first way to achieve our final visualization. Let's name it manual method. Now let's spice it up and jump to the formula methods to achieve the same results but intelligently. Let me write the name of the method here. Although we'll dive into every formula, functions and pivot table in greater detail when we dedicatedly learn Google Sheets after Tableau, but think of this as just a primer. The goal here isn't to overload you with technical formulas or details, but rather to think logically and understand the calculation flow. Even though I'll go slow, don't stress too much about memorizing formulas right now. Just grasping the logic is more than enough for now. Alright, but first let's remove any filter from the main orders table. Deactivate the filter by clicking on the filter button. Notice the change, it has deactivated the filter from all the columns. Now tell me, what is the first thing we identified from the main orders table and wrote it down in the sheet to create this aggregated table? That's right, it's the name of the categories. This is what we have identified and wrote it down over here. Can I say these are the unique categories in this category column? Think about it, yes? So we first need to identify unique categories from this category column in the orders table. To achieve this, click on the cell where you want to begin writing the formula and let's write a simple unique formula to identify all these unique categories. As I already told you in previous video, the formula starts by writing the equals sign. So it's equals unique bracket and here we need to write the range of the cells on which this unique function to apply. No need to input manually. Just write this much and go to the orders table. We want the range to begin from the first cell in the category column, which is this cell N2. So click on it. Notice a change in the value in the formula and the formula bar. Cool. So this is the starting point of the range. So to select till the last value, we can use the keyboard shortcut Command plus Shift plus down arrow button. This should select the desired range. And again notice a change in the formula and the formula bar. It's essentially telling that this unique function is identifying all the unique values in the cell ranging from N2 to N9995 in the orders table. Now go ahead, close the bracket, and the moment you hit enter, all the unique values are auto-populated over here. Isn't it cool? So this is how you use an inbuilt formula or function in Google Sheets to get the job done. Now that you have identified the unique categories, it's time to introduce another cool function that automatically calculates the total sales for each of these categories one by one without manual effort. Ready? Let's dive in. Alright, before jumping onto the formulas, let's build the logic first. Think about it. How did we calculate the total sales for the furniture category? We did it manually step by step. But if I had to give clear instruction to Google Sheets to do this automatically, here's I would break it down. So to identify sum of sales for furniture category, I'll tell the sheet whenever a value in column N is equals to the furniture, we need to sum up the corresponding values in column Q, that is the sales values, right? That's exactly the logic we will now translate into a formula. Notice that here we are summing values based on a specific condition, which is sum the sales values if the category is furniture. And that's exactly why the formula we use is called sum if. Cool. Let's start writing the syntax of the formula. Let's go to the calculation sheet and in front of the furniture category, we start by writing equals sum if bracket, and the first thing we need to input is the range column on which the condition is applied, which is a category column. So go ahead and select the category column from the order sheet. Click on this column N to select whole of the category column and keep noticing the changes in the formula bar. Now for the second input, type a comma first. We want to first do the sum only for the furniture category, so I can type furniture over here. But why type manually when we have already identified this furniture string using a unique function in the simple sum calculation sheet? So go ahead and delete this. Go to the calculation sheet and click on the cell G5 where this furniture value is identified by the unique formula. By clicking on this cell, we input the address of the cell G5 where this furniture value is located. Cool, we are halfway there. Here we are saying look for this G5 which is furniture in the order sheet and column which is category. So essentially till this point this formula translates to if the category is equals furniture. Now put a comma in the formula and go to the order sheet again, and this time we are going to select the sales column to complete the formula. Go to the orders table and select the sales column and notice the changes in the formula. Now let's translate this formula into the plain English. If the category column is equals to G5 which is furniture, we are going to sum the sales column, right? So go ahead and complete the formula by typing the closing brackets and hit enter. And just like that, we got the total sales for the furniture category. Let's round it off by clicking here and see if the value exactly matches the value we have identified through manual method. From the quick access toolbar, click on this decrease decimal places till we achieve the integer figure. Awesome. It matches the value that we have identified through manual method. Now you can either drag this formula to the rest of the categories, or we can double click on this left bottom dot to auto populate for the rest of the categories. Great. This is how we use inbuilt formulas or functions to achieve this aggregated view in the sheets. Now let's name the headers for this small table as well, just like we did it over here. I can just select these two cells and copy them and paste it over here. Cool. Now time to convert this table into a bar chart again. Select the whole table, go to insert and select the chart option. Again, instead of pie chart, select the column chart and put the labels by clicking on this customize button, then go to series, go down and click on the data labels. Now adjust the size of the chart and put it below its table, and it's done. Now it's time for the last method you might have been waiting for, and that is pivot tables. Now that you understand the logic behind how these calculations work for aggregating sales at the category level, here's the good news. We don't have to write these formulas again and again. There's a much simpler and faster way to do this, and that's exactly where pivot tables comes in. If you look closely, what we are really doing is we are just summing up the sales column as per each category groups. And there are just two fields involved in this computation, the category field and the sales field. Wouldn't it be great if we could just select these columns and let Sheets automatically sum up the sales column for each category? Sounds like a great idea, right? Well, that's exactly what pivot tables are designed to do. They automate aggregation in just a few clicks. Let's see it in action. To insert the pivot table in the sheet, we need to go to the first cell of the sheet, which is A1. Here we'll select the whole table and then go to insert in the menu bar and select the pivot table. When you create a pivot table, Sheet will ask whether you want to insert it into a brand new sheet or keep it in the existing sheet. You can choose either option, but I'll go with the existing sheet so we can have all methods side by side for easy comparison. Once I select the existing sheet, it asks me where exactly I want to place the pivot table. To do that, I'll click on this table icon, and when the selection screen pops up, I'll navigate to our calculation sheet. To put the starting location of the pivot table, just select the cell where you want to place the pivot table. I'm selecting the cell number L4 and press OK. And finally, hit the create button. Scroll a little bit towards the right hand side and you will see this highlighted area. This is where our pivot table will appear. And on the right hand side, we have the pivot table editor, which means we are all set to start performing pivot table aggregations. Notice that on the extreme right hand side, you will see a list of all fields from the main orders table. This means we can easily drag and drop the fields we need to build our pivot table. Also, the pivot table editor is already hinting at the structure. It has rows and values in the highlighted area where the pivot table will appear, and the rows and values section in the pivot table editor where we will drag and drop the fields. Now, if we compare this table with the table we manually created, it is clear that in the row section we need to place a category field, and in the value section we need to put the sales field. So remember this rule: categorical data goes into rows and numerical data goes into values. Now let me demonstrate you what do I mean by this. Go ahead and select the category field from the available list and drag it into the rows section just below the rows, and observe the change. All the unique categories appear instantly. It's like using this unique function to figure out all the unique categories in this category column, but with just a simple drag and drop. Now it's time for the sales field that we need to drop on the values. So go ahead and pick the sales and drop it under the values, and observe the change. Magic, right? No need to write this hefty sum-if formula like we did earlier. But now you truly understand what's happening behind the scenes, how unique categories are identified, and how sales are summed up for each category. And that's exactly why I showed you the formula-based calculations first, basically to engrave the logic into your mind before introducing the pivot tables magic. Now that we are almost done, let me quickly navigate you through a few key options in the pivot table editor. Don't worry about all the details just yet. We'll deep dive into everything after we complete Tableau. The first thing you will notice is this grand total, which shows the total sales, which is around $2.23 million. You can leave it as it is, or if you prefer a cleaner view, you can hide it by simply unchecking this show totals option inside the category field in the rows section. Once I uncheck the show totals, the grand total below this table disappears. Also, how do we know that these sales are being aggregated using the sum function, just like we did it over here using the sum-if function? If you look inside the value section of the pivot table editor, you will see that the sales field is added with an aggregation function next to it. So by default, it is set to sum. But here's the cool part. You can actually change it to other aggregations like average sales, maximum sales in each category, and what is the minimum sales in each category, and much more depending on what insights you need. Be my guest and explore these aggregation types on your own. We'll cover the important ones again in Tableau section as well. Some of them like standard deviation and variance might seem a bit advanced right now, but don't worry about them just yet. I'll be teaching all of these concepts in detail in my data science probability and statistics course. But if you're curious, a quick Google search can give you a good head start about these concepts. Cool. Now it's finally time to convert this pivot table aggregation into a bar chart. But before, let me rename this column to total sales in dollars. Just double click on the cell and rename it to total sales in dollars. One more thing, just like the total sales in other tables, which is an integer value, let's convert these numbers to integers as well. First select this column M in which these values are located, and then from the quick access toolbar, click on decrease decimal places till you achieve the integer value. Great. Now it's time to convert this pivot aggregated table into a bar chart again. Cool. Now we are all set and explored all three methods of computing total sales per category in the sheets and converted the aggregated view into a cool bar charts. Now let's take a quick formatting lesson to make this table more presentable, just for aesthetics and reporting purposes. Let's tweak the formatting a bit so that it looks more professional and polished. Trust me, a well-formatted table not only looks good, but also makes your analysis easier to interpret at a glance. You will appreciate the change once we are done with the formatting. First, let me try adjusting few column width so that we can have all three charts in the same view without overlap. In the row 2, we have the titles, which is indicating that which method we have used to prepare this aggregated view and the chart. I like to select these two cells and increase the font size to 12, make it bold. Let's highlight the cell in orange And finally, let's merge these two cells together for a cleaner look. Click on this merge cell in the quick access toolbar and notice the change. Now repeat the same step for the other titles as well. Okay, so title is taken care of. Let's now quickly format these aggregated tables as well. First, select the column names. I like to bold the column names, fill the black color and set the font color to be white. Now let's select this whole table and try putting borders around the cell. To put the borders, go to the quick access toolbar again and click on the borders icon and select all borders. And finally, for the text alignment, click on this horizontal align and select the left alignment. Repeat the similar process for the rest of the tables. Great. We can also get rid of the background grid lines. Go to the view on the menu bar and under the show, let's uncheck the grid lines. Awesome. Now this looks much cleaner and is ready to go into our reports. Let's put this screenshot into the slides as well. And that's a wrap for the Excel implementation of a solution. I hope now you clearly understand what goes behind the scenes, the logic and calculations involved in creating even a simple bar chart in Excel. Now let's move on to the Tableau's implementation. Now we have officially entered the Tableau's arena and the Superstore sales data is all set and imported into Tableau. In the last video, I gave you a quick interface tour of Tableau. Now it's time to take this journey forward and start building visualizations and insight the smart way. We just explored pivot tables in Sheets, witnessing how effortlessly we could drag and drop fields to build an aggregated view in seconds. Now this is also one of the reasons I introduced pivot tables early in this course. I wanted to see connection between pivot tables and Tableau. Here, remember this? We had a list of fields ready to be dragged into the rows and values. Now look at Tableau's data pane. It follows the same logic but takes things to next level. In fact, many analysts even call Tableau a fancy pivot table because it has all the core pivot table functionalities with way more power, flexibility and visualization capabilities. Now see how effortlessly I'll build the same aggregated view in Tableau. Just like pivot tables, we have rows and in addition, we also have columns over here. Here they are called row shelf and column shelf. Alright, let's get started by dragging the category dimension onto the row shelf. The moment we drag category to the rows, Tableau automatically updates the view and displays unique categories present in the category field data, signaling that it's ready to aggregate numbers at the category level. Now take a close look at the category pill in the row shelf. It's blue. This color coding is Tableau's way of telling us that category is a dimension, which means it contains qualitative or categorical data rather than numerical values. Now let's bring in sales, which is a measure, and you will find it below this horizontal line in the data pane. Since we want to create an aggregated table view, we'll drag and drop the sales field onto the text ABC in the view itself. In just two simple drag and drops, we have a table ready, showing total sales for each category. Notice how the default aggregation here is also set to sum, as indicated by this green pill for sales. This means Tableau is automatically summing up values for each category, just like we did manually in Sheets earlier. We've already gone through the logic behind summing up sales per category using formulas in Google Sheets. Now you should be able to relate to this very easily in Tableau. Makes sense, right? Now if you don't want to drop sales directly onto the text, this is another way to achieve the same view. You can directly drop the sales onto this text card in this marks pane. But first, let's remove the sales from the view by dragging it out. I'll drop the sales measure directly onto the text in the marks pane. Same result, right? Cool. Before we move ahead, let's rename this sheet to category sales table. To rename the sheet, just double click on the sheet name at the bottom bar and rename it. As soon as you hit enter, notice how this also updates the sheet title automatically. We can also put a customized title by double clicking on the title itself and edit it over here. Currently it is displaying the sheet name, but you can remove it and give your own title as well and click OK. And there are many customizations possible over here. Feel free to explore these customizations. Let's undo and go back to the default sheet title. Now let's see what happens when we drop the sales field onto the column shelf instead of the text. Let's create a new sheet by clicking on this new sheet icon at the bottom. And this time again, let's drag the category to the rows, but instead of dropping the sales to text, let's drop the sales to the columns. Tableau now creates a bar chart instead of a table, which is because dropping a measure, which is sales, onto the column shelf tells Tableau to represent data visually rather than as text. Right now we have a horizontal bar chart because the category is on the row shelf and the sales is in the column shelf. To quickly switch this chart from horizontal to vertical bar chart, we need to swap the rows and columns. The easiest way to do this is by clicking on this Swap Rows and Column button in the toolbar. Let's go ahead and click it. See how Tableau instantly flips the chart. Now categories are in the column shelf and in the view, the categories are on the x-axis. Similarly, the sales is in the row shelf and on the view the sales are on the y-axis. So in general, columns corresponds to x-axis and rows corresponds to y-axis in Tableau. Now that we have our vertical bar chart, we can resize it to make it more readable. Just hover over the edges of the plot until this resize cursor appear and then click and drag to adjust the width and height as per your preference. Let's make few more customizations to enhance the simple visualization, starting with adding some colors. Wouldn't it be great if each category had its own distinct color? To do this, just drag the category field onto the color icon in the marks pane, and just like that, we have added colors. Notice how Tableau automatically introduces this cool legend card, showing which category corresponds to which color. We can even customize these colors just by clicking on this drop down in the legend card and select Edit Colors. There's a wide range of color options to explore, but for now, let me quickly change the technology color to green and click OK. Feel free to play around and find the color that suits your style. Great. Now let's display the sales numbers directly on each category bar. To do this, simply drag the sales measure onto the label option in the marks pane. Now the category-wise sum of sales is clearly shown on the bars. Also keep an eye on the marks pane as it updates. It now indicates that category is assigned to color and sum of sale is displayed as a text label. And finally, rename this sheet to Category Total Sales. Awesome, it's already looking much better. See how easy it is to create this plot in Tableau. With just few drag and drop actions, we have built a clean and insightful visualization. Now that we have created our first visual in both Sheets and Tableau, even though it's a basic plot, it's a good practice to summarize the key insights and business recommendations. Let's highlight the main takeaways. The first one is pretty evident. Technology leads in sales with a total sales more than $836,000, while furniture and office supplies have almost similar sales, which indicates balanced revenue distribution between furniture and office supplies. And finally, a small recommendation to business. The business should focus on expanding technology offerings while optimizing promotions for furniture and office supplies to boost overall sales. With these insights, we have now covered all 5 key aspects of this simple business question, starting from defining the question, understanding its importance to the business, discussing the solution approach in detail, implementing the solution in both Sheets and Tableau, and finally providing recommendations. Cool, now let's quickly cover one more important concept before moving on to the next fundamental business question. Remember the calculated field we created in Sheets to display sales values in Indian rupees? Now let's try to create the same calculated field or column in Tableau. In Tableau, to create a calculated field, click on this drop down in the data pane and select the first option, that is to create the calculated field. Let's rename this field as Sales in Indian Rupees. The sales value in INR is simply the existing sales value multiplied by 86 as per the conversion rate we chose in the last video. So in this formula editor, type sales and select this sales field from the suggestions, multiply it by 86 and hit OK. This is how we can easily create a calculated field in Tableau. Now let's quickly navigate to data source and check out how this calculated field appears. Scroll to the extreme right and you'll notice that this newly created calculated field looks exactly like what we have in Google Sheets. Now let's go back to the category total sales sheet, and instead of displaying sales in US dollars, we can display sales in INR on this bar chart. To do this, I'll quickly duplicate this sheet by right-clicking on it and select the duplicate and rename it to category total sales in INR. Notice that we have used the sales field in two places, one in the rows and one in the text label. Let's remove these two pills first. Now we'll replace these two positions with a newly created calculated field which displays sales in Indian rupees. Observe that Tableau has placed a small equal sign in front of the hash symbol, indicating that this is a calculated field. Let's drag the sales to the rows first and then onto the text label in the marks pane. Now we have the total sales per category displayed in Indian rupees. Great. Notice, since these numbers are quite large in Indian rupees denomination, let's quickly format them to make them ready for reporting purposes. To format these numbers, go to the marks pane and click on the green pill which displays sales in INR that is used to display the text. And from the drop-down, select Format. Here you will find multiple customization options for your text. For example, style, alignment, and numbers formatting. I'll leave the most of the formatting choices to you, but let's quickly apply the most important one to improve clarity. First, in the font, I like to make it a bit bigger and make it bold. Keep noticing the changes that these numbers are going through on the bar plot. Then go to Numbers and select this Currency Custom option. Here, let's round it to the whole number first. For example, making it to the 0 decimal places. Let's choose the display unit as million and instead of this dollar, add a prefix as INR space. And that's it. Now you can close this formatting window. Now it's looking much better. Now we know that technology category has done a total of 72 million sales in Indian rupees. Awesome. This is how you can do a quick formatting of your visualization labels. Looking much better, right? So that was a quick introduction to calculated fields and formatting in Tableau. As we progress, we will dive into more complex calculations and advanced field manipulations. But for now, this should be a solid starting point. Great. Now let's move on to the second and final business question for this video. Since we have built a solid framework, understood aggregation, and learned to create first visualization efficiently in both Excel and Tableau, it's time to apply these skills to our next question. Here, we need to determine the average sales per category. This seems like a simple business question, but there's a small catch. If you think about it, the question itself is somewhat incomplete. You should break it down and clarify what exactly we mean by average sales. Whenever you are asked to calculate an average aggregation with respect to a specific dimension, here it is category, you should always clarify what average actually means. As per our data understanding, an order can contain multiple products and each row represents a single sale value for a product. If we take the simple average of sales per category, it will give us the average sale per item in that category. Makes sense, right? Think about it. Don't worry, I'll demonstrate this in few seconds. Before computing the simple average sales per item per category, let's understand why this metric is important for the business. So basically, to understand sales performance across different categories, we need to compare which one generates a higher average revenue per product. This gives us a clearer picture of how each category is performing. Now let me show you how to compute this simple average aggregation. We'll start with the same data table we used earlier for total sales calculation. The first step remains unchanged, which is summing the sales for each category. Now to calculate the average sale per product, we divide the total sales by the number of products. For example, in the office supplies category, total sales amounts to $120 and this comes from 4 products. So the average sale per product for office supply is 120 divided by 4, which is $30. Likewise, the average sale per product for furniture is $240 and for technology it is $400. Once we have these aggregated values, the final step is to transform this simple average data table into a clean and visually appealing bar chart for reporting purposes. Although I'll teach you the advanced concepts for data aggregation called level of detail in upcoming section, and we'll see how we can compute the average order sales per category from absolute basics. But for now, it would be great if you can think a little bit how these two questions are different and how would you build a rough solution to compute the average order sales per category. For now, let's quickly implement this simple average solution approach in both Sheets and Tableau. Let's start with the Sheets first. Since we've already calculated the total sum in the sheet, we can use it to calculate the average as well. Let's go ahead and right-click on the sheet to duplicate the sheet and rename it to Simple Average Calculations. First, let's use the manual or lookup method. Go ahead and delete the data and rename the column to Average Sales in dollars. Notice the plot. Since it was built using this data, it becomes empty after the data deletion. Now go to the order sheet and apply the filter from the quick access toolbar and filter the category for the furniture only. Select the sales column and this time note down the average sales from the status bar. It is around $350. Let's enter this value into the table on the average sheet. Next, repeat the same steps for office supplies category. Go to the orders table and this time select only office supplies. And select the sales column and note down the average, which is in this case is $119. Let's put these values against the office supplies category in the average calculation sheet. And finally, look up for the average value for the technology category. Select the sales column and this time the average value is around $453. Let's put it over here in the average calculation sheets against the technology category. Once done, notice how the bar plot gets updated accordingly. Cool, that was a lot of effort. Now let's move on to the formula method and again rename this column to the average sales in dollars. And delete the last two entries in this table. Just double click on the furniture cell and you will see that we have already used the unique formula to identify unique categories, which is fine in this case, so let's leave it as it is. Double clicking on this cell shows us the sum if formula that we have used earlier. Now instead of calculating the conditional sum, we need to compute the conditional average. It's very easy, we just need to change the formula name. Instead of sum if, use the average if formula. Select from the suggestions below and hit enter and drag this formula across the rest of the cells to observe the desired change. Notice this updated the chart as well, and these values are exactly similar to the manual method values. Now for the final method using a pivot table, which is also super easy. First rename this cell to average sales in dollars and click on this edit button just below the table, and this will bring up the pivot table editor on the right hand side. Now navigate to the values section where we have dragged the sales field and simply change the aggregation method from sum to average. And you will observe the change over here. That's it. This is how you can easily find the average item sale value per category in Sheets. Now let's go to Tableau and see how effortlessly we can build the same visualization in Tableau. Go to the category total sales and duplicate this sheet and rename it to category average sales. Now here also if you notice, the sum is used as an aggregation function both to display the total sales as well as the text labels. Now let's change the aggregation function from sum to average. To do this, click on the sum of the sales green pill in the row shelf and go to the drop down menu and select measure. And notice that by default the aggregation is set to sum. Change it to average and observe the change in the chart. The height of the bars is now displaying the actual average per category, but the data labels are still showing the total sum of the sales for each category. This is because in the marks pane, the text label is set to the sum of the sales aggregation. Again, change this aggregation from sum to average by clicking on the drop down and select the average aggregation and observe the changes in the chart. It now correctly displays the labels as well. Cool. In this video, we have explored multiple data aggregation methods in Sheets and built the logic from scratch. I'll limit the use of Sheets from the next video onwards, as we'll completely switch to Tableau to build more complex and beautiful visualizations. But I wanted to proactively think about the data and the aggregated table view behind each visualization. For example, this is the aggregated table behind this bar plot visualization. This habit will train your mind and turn you into a data wizard in no time. That's it for this video. Let's quickly summarize everything we have covered so far. We started with a business question where we need to figure out the total sales per category in the Superstore dataset and try to approach the solution in a 5-step approach. Identifying the question, why it is important to business, how to structure the approach, technical implementation, and finally, deriving insights. For structuring the approach, we took the dummy data and tried to understand the principles of aggregation and the type of plot we want for this simple analysis. Then we implemented the solution in Sheets, where I demonstrated multiple approaches like manual method, formula method, and certainly introduced pivot table for the final method. In this process, we learned the logic behind data aggregation and explored important sheet formulas like unique and SUMIF. After that, we implemented the solution in Tableau itself and experienced the ease and user-friendly interface of Tableau. We quickly created this beautiful visualization in Tableau, showcasing how Tableau allows for efficient and seamless data analysis, making it easy to build insightful visualization with just few drag and drops. After that, just like we created a calculated field in Sheets in the last video where we displayed the total sales in Indian currency, we did the same thing in Tableau. Then we transformed the data into sleek visualization that shows the total sales in INR per category. Additionally, we also formatted the data labels to make the visualization more presentable and easier to read. Next, we explored the second business question, which focused on identifying the average sales per category. I pointed out the importance of clarifying the question as it could have dual meanings, whether it's the average sale per item or the average sale per order within that category. It's crucial to understand the context and ensure that the right interpretation is applied when calculating the average, as it impacts the insights derived from the data. We built the approach around this calculation and created a rough visualization based on the aggregated view. We then implemented the solution in Sheets using the previous 3 methods. In the formula method, we introduced a new formula, average if, to compute the conditional average. Additionally, in the pivot table method, we changed the aggregation from sum to average to achieve the same result. And finally, we built the same plot in Tableau and demonstrated how we can change the aggregation function within Tableau as well, but with the added advantage of Tableau's powerful visualization and more dynamic and interactive display. Awesome! I suggest you practice these concepts and take time to understand the simple but important content we discussed in this video. See you in the next one.